you can walk through a lot of what ifs. And by doing all that, right, it's just going to help you go, all right, yep, our bucket is big enough. We've saved enough money, and let's pull the trigger for that early retirement.
Welcome to the Your Life, Your Money podcast with Scott Searens, teaching you how to thrive in life, wealth, and retirement.
Welcome in to Your Life, Your Money, the podcast that helps you thrive in life, wealth, and retirement. I'm Ben George, along with Scott Searens, the president and financial advisor at Searens Financial Group. And today we've got a good show for you. It's all about planning to retire, right? We talk about it, but if you have 65 as kind of that age that you have in mind right now, what areas do you need to have covered? What do you need to have in order? What are some specific things you need to be focusing on to make sure that you're ready to go by that age? And this is what Scott does every day with his clients. We're going to run through this today on the show. Looking forward to this topic. Scott, how you doing?
Hey, I'm great, Ben. And not only retiring at 65, but I really want to focus on what if people want to retire early? What if they want to retire before age 65? So what if it's 50, 55, 60, right? Pick an age, but really the focus today is, hey, what if you want to retire before the age of 65? And I think we'll cover some really great topics today of why that age 65 is kind of an interesting point. But I think the main focus is, hey, maybe you've worked hard, you've saved hard, you just want to do, enjoy life while you're young and healthy. So what is it that you need to do? What is it that you need to have covered and in place if you want to retire before 65 or before? So anytime before that, I think that's our goal for today, is to help people make sure that they're covered for that.
Well, I'm looking forward to it. I thought we'd just open up with a quote here to kind of ease us into the conversation, because it kind of fits in line with what we're talking about today. And it came from an unknown source. So that quote for today, I like this one. Retirement is wonderful if you have two essentials: much to live on and much to live for. So true.
Very, very true. I tell you, and I'm sure you've heard, and I agree with this, right? Life isn't all about money.
Right.
But back to the quote, right? It is kind of an essential. I mean, we do need money to be able to live. But as you've seen too, there's people that have all the money in the world, but at the same time, they are miserable.
Right.
And so I just think it's really, as we talk about today's subject and early retirement, and we'll get into this in a little bit, but, what is it that you really enjoy in life? What makes you happy? What do you want to do in your free time? And that comes down to, whether it could be travel, it could be gardening, it could be golfing, it could be the kids and the grandkids. I mean, for some people, actually, what they really like to do is work. But I think, just like the quote said, retirement is wonderful as long as you not only just have the one essential, right? Making sure, I think we talk a lot on the podcast about making sure your finances are ready for retirement. But hey, you also have to make sure that, what is it that you're living for? What makes you happy? What are your interests? What do you want to do? What are those activities that are going to keep you busy as well?
Well, whatever those goals are and whatever you have in mind, we definitely want to try to help you reach those goals. That's what Scott does every day with his clients. That's what we're kind of aiming to do on this show today. But if you want to learn more, obviously get in touch with Scott afterwards. That's the best thing to do, is sit down with a professional and kind of hash out some of these things or whatever questions you have. But the good thing is we put everything up online at lifemoneyshow.com. Scott's kind of created a hub there to kind of capture a lot of different things that he produces content-wise, from the podcast to videos and more. So if you do have an interest to learn more about financial planning, retirement planning, I encourage you to visit the website, lifemoneyshow.com. All right, so let's talk about these areas you need to have covered. I think these are all very important. There's obviously more to retirement planning than these, but I guess these are, 5 essentials, Scott, that you need to have?
Yeah, I would say 5 areas, again, focusing on if you want to retire before the age of 65, 5 areas that you want to have covered, making sure that you've checked these boxes to help give you that confidence to really transition into that next stage of your life, whether it be full retirement. I know some people say, I'm not really a big fan of that word retirement. Well, maybe it's just financial independence, right? It's or just transitioning from working full-time into part-time. But again, what is it that you want to check the box on before age 65?
Okay. So whatever your reason for maybe leaving the workforce, or you just ready for independence, maybe you just want to enjoy life while you're young and you have your health. There's a lot of reasons for wanting to retire at the age of 65. And let's lead off with the most the most important and maybe the most obvious. Scott, you got to have enough money.
You got it, right? I think it is the most obvious, but we really need to talk about it. And it's understanding that if you do plan to retire early, right, you're going to make that transition. Maybe COVID got you thinking to say, well, boy, there's more to life than just working. Or you've watched your parents, right, and they never took a break, and then unfortunately one person got sick, and then they never really got to enjoy retirement. So I see times are changing, and people are really looking to retire early, right? I work with a lot of savers, and that's what they're looking to do. So the first one, like you said, it seems obvious, but we really need to talk about it, is having enough money. Is your financial bucket big enough to be able to pull the trigger, right, to move into that retirement date? So don't just go booking your retirement party just yet, making sure that you've got enough in that financial bucket. And why do I talk about that? Well, you have to remember that when you transition into retirement, you're going from this phase of accumulating money, saving it, putting it away, putting it to the side, letting your money grow, to this whole new phase where your company paycheck will no longer be coming in. And now you have to go to financial bucket of money, your retirement savings, everything that you've saved up, and really start cutting your own personal paycheck. And so do you really understand as you go into this, right, how big is the personal paycheck that you can cut from your bucket of money? And if all of your money is in retirement accounts like IRAs, 401ks, 403bs, or those 457 plans, don't forget that you're going to have to take taxes out of that check as you cut that check, right? So you're going to have to withhold for taxes. So as you look at your bucket, depending on which type of account it sits in, you might not have, for instance, all of that money. So if you've got $500,000 or $1 million sitting in an IRA, you don't actually own $1 million. You own $1 million less what you owe to the IRS for taxes. So that's just another thought to keep in mind. The other part I see, Ben, when people are retiring early, right, it's easy just to get caught up in the excitement. Mm-hmm. It's easy to say, oh, okay, well, hey, right now I'm living off of X amount of dollars per month, so that's what I'll need. But boy, so easily can some very typical things be forgotten. And as you move into retirement, I'm guessing people are going to be active, and so they're going to want to take vacations, right? So have you really tallied up all of those different, I'll call them extras or activities that you're going to have as part of your retirement? So think vacations. Maybe you want a winter home. I'm not sure about you, but every so often, need another car, right? Because your car gets old. What about home updates, renovations? So there's a lot of things that can be easily forgotten, right? Let's just say you need a new furnace or air conditioner on your home maintenance. I think that's one of the things that comes up all the time, is that, folks in their plan say, oh, I'll live off about this much a month. And then they're calling going, hey, I need to withdraw some more money from my accounts because my furnace just went down.
Right.
Or, yeah, I didn't even think about this, but my roof's 25 years old on my house, and now I've got to replace it. And so it's things like that sometimes can be easily forgotten. So as you're looking to, target this early retirement, I just say, hey, take some time, really sit down and start adding up or creating a list, and just put rough values next to them of all of those extras that might come up. A few other things to take into account, especially if you're retiring early. So, a lot of times they say, hey, if you're retiring in your 60s, you might need to plan on a 30-year retirement. If you're planning on retiring in your 50s, that could be a 40-year retirement. So you have to take into account inflation, the cost of goods going up. You look at the cost of gasoline over the last 20 years, or the cost of bread. mean, the cost of a U.S. postage stamp, right?
Yeah.
Everything has continued to go up over time. So really think about that long term that, okay, wait a second. Yeah, the cost of goods are going to potentially go up as well. If you're an active person or an active couple, I find a lot of times that once people retire, their retirement spending could be just the same as their pre-retirement spending, or it could be even more. Because if you're an active person, what are you going to do if you have more time on your hands? Figure out a way to fill it, right?
Yep.
So you really have to be prepared for that your spending could actually be more. So, I think that there's this age-old rule. Now, this is kind of based on 30 years, like a 30-year retirement. So take this kind of with a grain of salt, but it's called the 4% rule,
Right.
meaning that you could withdraw 4% per year, now adjusted for inflation, from your portfolio and have your money, potentially have your money last through retirement. Now, some say it should be more than 4%. Some say it should be less than 4%. But just for our conversation's sake today, you can kind of start to look at your portfolio, and let's just say you have $1 million in it. Well, that would be your starting withdrawals could be about $40,000 a year. So as you look at your overall picture, is that going to be able to support you?
Right.
And I think that's where the other part comes in. So one, is your bucket big enough? Meaning, will that support you? But then the next part is going, okay, well, if that's giving me $40,000 a year, for our example's sake, what else do you have coming in? Meaning, are you going to have a pension coming in? Are you going to have a Social Security coming in? So I think really looking at and timing out when all of your different income sources are going to come in. So I guess to wrap up on this one, like we said, kind of an obvious subject, but it's really important to think through and talk about it. It's obvious just to go, if my spending's been X dollars a month and I can use this so-called 4% rule, that's going to be okay. But some actions would be, I think, number one is really tallying up what could all of those potential extras be, meaning vacations, activities, a new car, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
Number two, I would say, is setting some money aside for financial emergencies. I think everybody should have a reserve fund, a liquidity fund. So as you think about retiring early and venturing into this new stage, maybe start piling up a little bit of cash so you're ready for some financial emergencies.
Yeah, I was going to say it's obvious that you need money. I mean, we know that. But what's not obvious is how much you're going to need, all these different areas that you need to have covered, and to make sure you have a plan for. I think in general we know, hey, I need money, but how much you need, how do you get there? That's where someone like you comes in, Scott, to really help somebody kind of clear that up. Because as you laid out, there's a number of items on that list to really account for. You might not even think about.
You're totally right. And then I'd say the last two specific actions just under this point, and we'll move on. One is just time everything out, right? And we like to call that an income plan. But okay, when are you going to take your pension? When are you going to take Social Security? When are you going to take withdrawals from your retirement savings, your financial bucket of money? Start really planning everything out to make sure that it will last. And then the last is from a portfolio standpoint. I think that, and this is again just helping make sure this bucket is big enough and is going to last through your retirement. From a portfolio standpoint, I'd give a few recommendations. One is that there's a lot of things out there that I'll say it's just marketing noise that says, oh, you retire, you should have a really conservative portfolio, or this age-old rule of 100. And my belief is that, well, yes, you do need to put some on the safer side of your portfolio to help you weather a storm if there is a market correction. But if you're going to be having a 30 or 40-year retirement, you're really going to need some growth. Got to keep up with inflation. So really having a good balance to that portfolio is important. And then stress testing that portfolio. So combining the portfolio with the income plan, running it through some tests to say, hey, what if there was another market crash? Or what if one spouse were to pass away? Or what if? You can walk through a lot of what ifs. And by doing all of that, right, it's just going to help you go, all right, yep, our bucket is big enough. We've saved enough money. and let's pull the trigger for that early retirement.
Well, that takes us to number 2. Part of what you need to have covered in that bucket are these big expenses, right? And I think one of the biggest that's out there that people just overlook or just aren't completely ready for or put off is health insurance, having a plan for health insurance.
I agree with you 100%, Ben. I think this is one that can be very easily missed, and it's a cost that could be hundreds to thousands of dollars a month. Trust me, as a self-employed person, I can see how much health insurance costs, and I've talked to many clients that as they go in and look at, early retirement, looking at those health insurance costs are a big factor. So this is where that age 65, came in from our beginning discussion, because at age 65, well, that's when Medicare starts. And Medicare is typically a lot lower than private health insurance. So if you are going to retire before 65, great. Nothing wrong with that. Just make sure that you account for the premiums that you'll need to pay to make sure you're covered from insurance standpoint. So some thoughts here or recommendations is, maybe one spouse wants to stay working to be able to get health insurance for both spouses. What I've seen is sometimes a person is able to find like a part-time job that might actually, some companies out there, even part-time, they'll provide you health insurance. So maybe it's not going into full retirement. Maybe based on your scenario, you go part-time. Now you've got your health insurance covered. Now you're able to go out and enjoy all the different activities that you love to do. Hey, that could be great balance for some folks. Another item that's out there are these health share networks. Now I've seen these networks. I'm not saying I'm pro or con the health share networks. All I'd really say is, really do your research and make sure that, you'll get the coverage that you need. Some of them seem like they'll provide you coverage at a much lower, cost than, I'll call it, private health insurance, but always do your research on those. A couple other points on this is, if you are looking to retire early, as I mentioned earlier, that, I've watched some couples as we're putting together their plan. One of the things I always recommend is go out and get a few quotes. I can always put some baseline numbers to things, but it's great for people to go out and get a few just quotes on what that private health insurance will cost. And so that way we can actually plug that into the plan. You've got a more realistic value that you're planning around versus just making some sort of estimates. And then the last thought process around health insurance is that if your company offers a health savings account, sometimes called an HSA, these are some really, really powerful accounts. And if your company offers this, now this is kind of pre-planning, right? So this isn't something that you'd be able to do if you're retiring at 60. It's not something that you'd want to look to do right at 59. This is more pre-planning. But if you think and know, even if you're not retiring early, if your company offers the health savings account, this is a great account to put money into. You get a tax deduction when you put money into it. The money grows tax-free. You can invest this money so you can get, potentially higher rates of return by investing it. And then you can make all of your withdrawals tax-free as well, as long as you're using them for qualified medical expenses. So a very powerful account there. I think back to your point, it's just a big expense to be aware of, but we don't want to forget about it. And we've walked through a lot of different actions here that, you can take advantage of or utilize, I guess to say, so that way you can still retire early and make it all work. But we just don't, I think the one point that we're trying to get across is that when you finally do pick that retirement date, we don't want you to go back to work. We don't want your money to run out. We want you to be well prepared and to help you do it with confidence.
Yeah, and making sure this is covered is the way you can get to that point. When I think about retiring a little bit before 65 or whatever that number is, whatever that age is, I think a lot of people just automatically think about Social Security because, oftentimes people's retirement is tied into those ages, right, with Social Security. So if people are thinking about retiring in their 50s, let's say, how do you have that conversation? What's that conversation sound like in terms of planning for your non-retirement accounts before that age of 60?
That's a great point because there is a a thought that you need to have in your mind. So if you're saying, you know what, hey, I've really been saving money and I want to retire in my 50s. One thing to be very aware of is that if you're to retire before the age 59 and a half, right? If all of your money is saved into retirement accounts like IRAs, 401ks, 403bs, 457s, any sort of withdrawals from those accounts prior to age 59 and a half would incur a 10% early withdrawal penalty. Now, there are some exceptions out there to the rules, but let's just say from, I'll say majority of the time, if you're to make withdrawals from those accounts prior to age 59 and a half, you could have a 10% early withdrawal penalty. So this is another area where it takes a little bit of pre-planning. If you want to retire in your 50s, that's great. I hope you're saving a bunch of money, you're ready to go, but you may want to think about saving it outside of your typical retirement accounts. That way you've got money, and this could be in a non-retirement account, an after-tax brokerage account, but that way you've got money ready for you that you can withdraw where you won't have those early withdrawal penalties. Now, for some people, and again, this is all, each company's plan is a little bit different, but you may have heard of the rule of 55. And what that is some companies will allow you to take withdrawals. And again, this is for a person that is turning age 55, has turned age 55 or is older than age 55. And this is specific to the 401k at that company. So if you have previous 401ks from other companies, it doesn't apply to those. It's just the 401k at the company you're at. You're turning 55 or older than 55. Some companies will allow you to take withdrawals from that 401k without any sort of penalty. So that's a kind of a great way to bridge that gap between age 55 and 59 and a half.
Okay.
But every company is different. So you really have to check with your company and your plan sponsor. But otherwise, again, retiring in the 50s, we really got to start thinking about, hey, where are we saving our money into? So be careful where you save all your money, and just not from an early retirement tip, but also from kind of a tax planning standpoint. It's good to be saving money into different tax buckets.
Yeah.
But from an early retirement standpoint too, saving money outside of those retirement accounts will help you bridge that gap and avoid any sort of early withdrawal penalties.
Well, I mentioned Social Security. Let's talk about that, because I think the next question would be, how do I factor in Social Security if I'm retiring early, right? Because that's a big part of a lot of people's income in retirement, but obviously you can't claim it in your 50s. So what does that strategy look like, and what should you be thinking about with Social Security?
Yeah, I think it's a big part to factor in if you're retiring early. So Social Security, as you mentioned, is a guaranteed stream of income. And then what else do you have to live off in retirement? Some may have a pension. Otherwise, you're focused on making withdrawals from your portfolio. And I'll kind of call that a fluctuating stream of income. So if you would imagine those on kind of one of those two-sided scales with that little balance point in the middle, this is what can, I'll say, sometimes make or break retirement, is finding that key balance between when do you start Social Security and that guaranteed stream of income that will get cost of living adjustments from the government, and how much should you be taking from your portfolio and the portfolio withdrawals. Because letting your Social Security grow and taking a higher amount of Social Security can really help take the pressure off or take the stress off of how much you have to withdraw from your portfolio in the future. Now, if you're retiring before age 65, and like we talked earlier, sometimes people go, oh, well, I have to align it with Social Security. And that's not really the case. And so I like to always say, hey, just ignore all those ages on the Social Security statement. We really want to plan around what you specifically want to do for your life and your retirement, or moving into those next stages of life. But thinking about Social Security at age 62, if you were to take Social Security at at that age. Anything before your full retirement age would be a reduced amount. So as an example, as of our recording here, according to the IRS website, if you were taking Social Security at age 62, that means you're going to receive 75% of what your full benefit would have been. So that's, as you mentioned, that's an important factor to take into account. If you retired early and now you're taking a reduced amount, is your financial bucket big enough to be able to support your lifestyle still? So Social Security is a really big decision. For some people, this might be a small part of their plan. For some people, this might be a larger part of their plan. But it's all going to help you and help your money last over that 30 to 40 year retirement. So just a few thoughts here. And why I say it's a big decision is because when it comes to Social Security, there's really no go backs. I mean, you can technically pay it all back and start at a new rate, but then you got to pay it all back, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you start at 62 and you're like, I would have rather taken it at 63, well, you're going to have to pay everything back so you can restart it at 63. So there's really no go backs to this decision. So you really want to strategically think it through. And you can take Social Security at 62, 63, 64. You can take it all the way up to age 70. And the longer that you wait to take it, the more that it's going to grow. I know that there's a lot of Social Security calculators out there. Now, a lot of those are just really based upon lifespan. So you say, I think that I'll live to, age 85, and then it'll go through a calculation to say, based on that, to maximize Social Security, you should start taking it, whatever age. While those are helpful, I don't really feel that those give the best picture from a client scenario, because you really have to take into account how much you've saved up in your retirement savings.
Okay.
Because if you've saved a ton in your retirement savings and Social Security is a little part of your overall retirement plan, well, maybe you do take it earlier and reinvest it. But if you haven't necessarily saved a ton in your financial bucket, well, then maybe it makes more sense to, wait on Social Security and let it grow a little bit. I've worked with different couples where one's taken it early or one's taken it at full retirement age, and then the other spouse has, waited till age 70. I think it's really important to think about it because, especially for couples, if one spouse were to pass away, you only get to keep one of the two Social Securities. So really important there. Now, the other thing is you may have a plan where, yes, you're going to take larger withdrawals from your portfolio up front, but by delaying Social Security and letting it grow, you now are able to maybe take reduced withdrawals from your portfolio for that longer period of your overall retirement plan. So just an area, again, if you're going to retire early, really think through this and how does it fit into that overall plan to help make sure that your money lasts.
So those are the biggest financial pieces of the puzzle you kind of need to figure out before you decide to retire early. But there is another piece of this that you need to be thinking about, and that's getting away from the financial aspect altogether. What are you going to do in retirement? How are you going to stay active, right? What are you going to do with all that extra time, as you mentioned? Because when you have that time, you're going to fill it with something, and a lot of times that might be expensive. But most importantly, though, you got to have your health to really enjoy it.
Yeah, I totally agree with you here. I think a key tip to enjoying the fruits of all of our hard labor is health. And I think one of the things, in speaking with a lot of different folks about retirement is we can get really caught up in the financial aspect of it, because I get it. It's a big fear of anyone would be is running out of money. But there's a life aspect to it that you really need to think about as well. And that's, what are you going to do with your time? And, I think work, when we're working, it constantly challenges our minds, could challenge our bodies, but it keeps our minds, bodies, it keeps them active. And to stay healthy, I think, to me, I feel is that a person really needs to stay active. And so when you do think about retirement, and if it's retiring early, what are you going to do with all that time? Are you going to volunteer? Maybe you're going to travel. You're going to take up a hobby. Think about that and have a plan of what you really want to do with your time. So that way you can go into retirement and already kind of have this new job in place. And that new job is all of these activities that you've planned out for yourself, or these hobbies that you want to take up, or just continue on, hobbies and activities that you're already doing, but maybe with some more time on your hands.
Yeah, there's a lot to consider in this, and I think you did a good job, Scott, of kind of outlining the key areas that you at least advise your clients on focus on. And for anybody that's thinking about retiring early, go through this list, see if these are things that you have in order, or you are at least on track to get a plan for. And if you don't, if you want to sit down and get assistance, I think that's important too, right? Reach out to Scott and do that. But let's kind of just quickly summarize it. Scott, I know it's kind of been a pretty in-depth discussion and a lot of great information, but just kind of quickly kind of wrap it up for us.
Yeah, I think, speaking about early retirement, and we talked about a lot of things, hey, make sure you've got this in place, make sure you got that in place. And I don't want to shy anybody away from it, right? I don't want them to listen to this and go, oh man, I don't know if that early retirement is doable. Early retirement is definitely doable. I'll tell you what, I work with a lot of savers, people that live within their means and they've saved a healthy amount into their retirement savings. Actually, what I've found is people didn't even know that they had the potential or the opportunity to retire early, meaning that they've just planned to work because they're looking at those Social Security statements going, well, I'll probably have to work till age, 66 or 67, whatever their full retirement age is. Or I really wanted my Social Security to grow till age 70, so I'm going to wait till retire to then. But, once you put this plan together, right, the timing of all of your different income sources, you look at how much you've saved in your retirement savings and outside of your retirement savings, you put that list together of all of the different activities, plus, hey, all of those things that you might, forget about, like the roof and the car and the furnace and home maintenance. And when you put all that together, I've found for a lot of people that they have the potential to retire early. And even after running through all the stress tests, looks like everything should be okay. So really putting those thoughts together in advance, putting that plan together in advance can really help you transition into those next steps with confidence. It can help you transition into those next steps without worry. Or, hey, if you want to continue to work, just having that plan in place or knowing that you could retire early, I've seen where that just helps people go to work and enjoy their jobs more. Or they say, you know what, instead of this job, I wasn't really happy there. I'm going to go work part-time over here because I know that I can do it.
Well, I think this is a great conversation, Scott. I encourage anyone that's thinking about this to sit down with you. Just start by visiting lifemoneyshow.com. We'll put this podcast there, but there's also other great resources that Scott produces on a weekly basis that you'll find there. So some great things to learn. And if you know someone that's thinking about retiring early, or if you're having that conversation with your spouse or someone in your family, share this podcast with them as well. Let them kind of get this list and run through this list of items that they need to have in order before they decide to retire early. I think it'll be very helpful for them. But as always, Scott, encourage anyone to reach out to you that has questions or want to kind of make sure things are in order, because it is a big leap to take to retire early. I know we all would love to have that opportunity to, but you got to make sure everything's buttoned up.
You got it. Hey, great conversation, Ben. Look forward to our next one.
Sierens Financial Group is an independent financial services firm that utilizes a variety of investment and insurance products. Investment advisory services offered only by duly registered individuals through AE Wealth Management, LLC. AE Wealth Management and Sierens Financial Group, Inc. are not affiliated companies. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal. Any references to protection, safety, or lifetime income generally refer to fixed insurance products, never securities or investments. Insurance guarantees are backed by the financial strength and claims-paying abilities of the issuing carrier. This podcast is intended for informational purposes only. It is not intended to be used as the sole basis for financial decisions, nor should it be construed as advice designed to meet the particular needs of an individual's situation. Sierens Financial Group, Inc. is not permitted to offer, and no statement made during this show shall constitute tax or legal advice. Our firm is not affiliated with or endorsed by the U.S. government or any governmental agency. The information and opinions contained herein, provided by third parties, have been obtained from sources believed to be reliable, but accuracy and completeness cannot be guaranteed by Sierens Financial Group, Inc.